Welcome everyone, the cube is on the move, but where is its final location and what is happening once it reaches there? That is what we're going to be talking about today with near concrete evidence as to where this cube is going to be landing, and it is all extremely exciting. If you guys are new around here, make sure you're subscribing, and if you're hyped to see exactly where the cube is going to end up, give this video a big fat thumbs up because we have so much information crammed into this video that it's going to be a good one. Now, before we even start talking about the cube, we have information on this week's update. Tomorrow, we are definitely going to be getting a brand new item in the form of the shockwave grenade. Essentially, like a hyped up, boosted impulse grenade, which will be coming in legendary rarity, I believe. The description says, send yourself, allies, or enemies flying like a human cannonball, grants immunity to full damage. So the in-game files suggest it's going to be a legendary item, which is obviously very rare. So it's essentially a boosted up impulse grenade that doesn't give you full damage, and I assume has even more power than the impulse. Can't wait to see how that works. I'll be covering it first here on the channel tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. It is going to be awesome. But back to the cube talk. So, for those of you guys that haven't realized, I'll talk you through what's happened so far. The cube is essentially a staggered event at the end of Season 5, which is what is happening at the moment, leading up to obviously the big reveal of Season 6. First off, the crack or the rift in the sky got to its smallest point, shot out an electric bolt, hit a point of the map on a mountain in Paradise Palms on one of the deserty rocks, and out came a massive cube. We couldn't do anything with it. We could bounce off it, get a little bit of shield. That was it. However, it started to move and has since been rolling ever since, and we're trying to work out where it's going to land up, and we've got so much information to tell us where that's going to be. Once it reaches its final destination, there will be an in-game event, a bit like the rocket launch, a bit like a new point of interest, like appearing, but obviously it'll be just as spectacular as like a lightning bolt coming down and something actually happening. But first of all, just in case you haven't actually seen the cube move, I caught it last night happening. It's since moved a little bit since then. I'm trying to capture it again for you guys, and the movement is slow. It is not triggered by anything. It is actually just done on a actual countdown and a timer, where in game the cube moves every 1 hour and 43 minutes currently. So honestly pretty damn quick. If you're in a playgrounds mode or a normal game, you can actually see the movement happening for yourself. Now, initially these movements were all in one direction, but that has since changed, and the cube is starting going off in different directions as the cube pleases, and has been crushing things along its way. It's actually destroyed a tree in its path, so anything that's in its way absolutely flattened. And you can see on screen here most of the movements that have been tracked so far at the time of recording this video, with the times on there as well to show you the direction it's currently heading in since it first spawned on the map. Now, so far on its route, as I said, it's crushed a tree. I'm looking at it right now, and it may be crushing a tiny little building, but it hasn't happened quite yet. If it does happen, I'll throw it up on screen for you guys to actually see. I'm hoping it happens whilst I'm in theater mode right now. But it looks like it will and potentially could cause actual structural damage to main points of interest. When the actual in-game event of the cube appearing happened, actually Ninja was streaming on Twitch, and he actually caught a lightning bolt come down and actually land near him in Salty Springs at the time. Now, the lightning bolt's been going nowhere near anywhere but the mountain where the cube had appeared, so the fact that a lightning bolt actually struck outside of that cube area is really unusual, but actually could be a direct point and correlation to where the cube will at least travel through en route to its final location and its final destination. Now, as I said, the cube isn't traveling in just a linear direction at the moment. It is moving around a little bit, but at least its general direction would line up with it crossing through Salty Springs and potentially causing big damage. Can you imagine if one of the houses just gets flattened and that's it? That house is no longer in the map. This cube can cause any sort of destruction it so pleases, and anything in its way is destroyed. So potentially, keep an eye out on this movement. It's happening every few hours. Salty could be victim to part of this movement and part of this structural damage, but as I said, it's not the final point. So the information I'm about to give you guys is literally in-game code. There are spoilers. Look away if you don't want to know what's going to happen, because we are going to be looking at key information here, letting us know what's happening with this cube. So hopefully you haven't clicked away, because we're about to look at something very exciting. So in the in-game code for Fortnite, there is code related to the movement and obviously where it's actually going to land. So the movement is divided up into 7 phases, and then a final phase where the in-game actual code says event flag BR-S5, so obviously season 5, which is the season we're in at the moment, and then the final movement says move to lake. That is right, after the 7 previous movement phases are over, the lake is the final ending point. And obviously the first thing you're going to think of is Loot Lake, but that is not the only lake in the Fortnite map. Let's just look at all of them before we jump to any conclusions. So if we're super strict here and look at all watery lake-like locations, the first few that come up that are super close is actually 2 lakes very close to where the cube landed in Paradise Palms. One was just next to it, one was a little bit north to it, and could definitely be considered lakes. There is also the watery area actually in the Viking Tower on top of the mountain, but there's a ship in it already, but the water does flow down from it, and there's also a tiny little bit of water, and also what could be considered a lake all the way in Lazy Links. We then got, obviously, Loot Lake, which is the obvious one, and the one potential location I'm going to throw out there, which is Dusty Divot, which has had water starting to creep back in, and I have always said that it would be cool if that turned into its own lake as well, which are all possibilities, but Loot Lake is, despite going through all the other lakes, looking like the most likely area to go to. Oh, actually, there is also a little bit of a watery area at the south side of Fatal Fields. I've seen people point that out as well, but there's loads of watery areas out there. But I'm just going to take that lake word for face value and just say it's Loot Lake, and I've got reasons to back it up as well. So, first of many reasons, it looks like Loot Lake is the final target for this cube. Number 1, and I love this one, and it actually goes back to last season, is actually all to do with the rocket launch. So I love the rocket launch, I love the theories around the rocket launch, and I feel like I nailed the theories and got it pretty much bang on. Now, one thing that related to the areas that changed within the Fortnite maps was all to do with the actual rocket launch itself and where the rocket went during that launch process. So for those of you guys that don't remember, it first went to Tilted Towers, didn't do anything there to be fair, but it did disappear, and we do have a new point of interest being built already. So I'm just going to leave that one to one side. We then had the rocket ship appear over what was Moisty Mire, and then travel all the way around the map, and then disappear around the area where that now the new Viking area is. The rocket then reappeared over Moisty Mire. We had those coordinates as well hidden away within last season, and that reappearance point completely changed the map into Paradise Palms. The rocket then actually went around and traveled around the map and ended up disappearing again in what is now the new Viking location. And also when the rocket actually reached maximum altitude and the thrusters dropped off, the thrusters landed in Anarchy Acres, and that changed to Lazy Links. So every single spot and every single part of the rocket which interacted with any part of the map ended up being a direct hint as to an area in which would be changed and brought in this season. Finally, the rocket obviously blasted off into the air, made a giant fracture above the sky, and that fracture gave us the cube. However, there's one part of that rocket launch where we haven't seen anything happen yet, and that was the reappearance of the rocket directly above Loot Lake. You guys may remember that because I was literally flying down over Loot Lake when I was watching that rocket launch, and it almost smashed into me. But it's the one part of the map where the rocket reappeared, entered, or lost a part of its ship, which hasn't seen an altercation yet within this season of Fortnite. So the cube landing there in Loot Lake and changing the map or doing something in the map in that area is one of the reasons why it could happen. The next reason is an interesting one and something that appeared again right at the beginning of the season, and people have many theories about it, and is basically a visual glitch. So some of you guys may have seen or noticed, and I noticed it as soon as the season started, where if you actually fly in or glide over at a very high height over Loot Lake, a visual glitch started to appear where it looked like there was some sort of triangular shape or some sort of pyramid in the middle of Loot Lake. However, that's not the only visual glitch in Loot Lake. There's lots of other lines and lots of other parts of Loot Lake where it looks like the water's almost being cut up and there's something underneath it, giving us some sort of hint that something has been changed within the visual files and within the actual structure of Loot Lake itself, hinting at the fact that Fortnite have already started preparations and already started to work out what will potentially happen with Loot Lake with some sort of map change. Now, I've seen a lot of people just throw this theory away just by saying it is a visual glitch. Fair enough, but as I said, it wasn't there before the start of the season when all this rocket stuff started happening, and there's also, to my knowledge at least, no other visual glitches in any of the other smaller lakes I've just mentioned to you guys. It is only in the big old Loot Lake. On top of that, and it's a very mathematical reasoning for it actually ending up in the big old Loot Lake, is all to do with going back to the coding again. As we know, there are 7 stages leading up to the final stage, and also some additional coding I want to show you guys with what will actually happen in the final stages. And if we actually have mapped out the movements so far, we can very basically actually cut down the map into squares simply by looking at the map within Fortnite. As we know, it's cut into squares listed. Oh my god, it just moved. It literally just moved. Oh baby, and it actually changed directions. Whoo! It actually moved. And this is really interesting. It was heading towards Salty Springs, but has now come back down and is going towards potentially the miniature lake in Fatal Fields. But let's not forget, this thing has been moving around in so many directions already that it is not going, as we said, in a straight line, but it has just moved away from the building I thought it was going to potentially cause some structural damage to. But that has literally just happened live. I'm going to make sure that was captured live as we were recording this video. More movements of the cube, guys. Man, every time that thing moves, it is a scary thing. That is a giant old block moving around the map right now. But let's get back to what I was saying, the mathematical reason for it heading in a Loot Lake direction. If we do take a look literally at the squares within the map, divided through A to J and then 1 to 10, and actually count out 7 square movements to get from the first square it started in all the way to Loot Lake, also giving options for it to move in other directions and then come back on itself, it would take 7 blocks to get from its initial starting point at least to the edge of Loot Lake. Now, if you want to count the final landing in Lake as an 8th block movement, it also allows it to move further around Loot Lake or take a little bit of a redirection, as we may have just seen literally right there live, and then go back on course to Loot Lake. But that is a very mathematical and literally a numbers reason why 7 movements worth of counting down if we're going to divide up each of those numbers into days. So 1 number equals 1 day equals 1 square movement within the world of Fortnite. Then finally, guys, what will happen when it reaches this lake that is within the coding, and who is going to be behind whatever happens? One thing I do like, and it's just a little theory I want to throw out there, but thank you to Philander who tweeted this at me, is actually that the coding and the lettering on the side of a cube looks a little bit like the coding and lettering that the visitor skin used to actually code in the rocket which he actually sent up into the rift. I like that, and if that skin does actually come back and have something to do with it, that'd be very, very cool. But let's not forget, obviously, the seasonal secret skin, this time the Enforcer, we know through the week 8 challenge loading screen is going to come back in multiple personnels to either take parts of the map away or put parts of the map back. It's going to be doing something within this season, but what we do know is that the final few lines of the secret code for the end of this event are listed as follows. So it's event flag, battle royale, S5, season 5 cube for all of them, going from rune 1 all the way to rune 7, so all the 7 movements that we know of, and eventually saying move to lake as the final one, start the move, turn on lake and lightning, which seems that when the cube reaches its final destination, whichever lake it ends up being, I personally believe, and a lot of hints leading towards it being Loot Lake, but it could be any of those smaller lakes we've mentioned, that once it reaches it, obviously water being a conductor, a great conductor of lightning, and the cube having come from a lightning bolt, will cause a giant lightning strike, damaging, changing, and most likely opening up this cube, revealing whatever is inside it, and leading into or setting in just another massive in-game event with the lead up, with the start of Season 6 and the end of Season 5, which is just absolutely crazy. And I cannot wait to see this actually happen live in action. Now for 7th stage, and the 7-day theory is correct. It started moving this Saturday, so it should finish moving and reach its destination on September the 1st on the next Saturday. Obviously, I'll be keeping an eye on all of its movements, tracking them, letting you guys know what happened. But let me know what you think of the lake theory. Do you think it is Loot Lake, or do you think it's going to be any of the other smaller lakes? Has literally just then started moving towards Fatal Fields, which was the opposite direction it was moving earlier. So things are getting crazy right now. But I do think, personally, Loot Lake is my choice of lakes for it to be landing, and it is very exciting. Guys, you can check out more Fortnite videos right now down below in my Fortnite playlist that contains all of my Fortnite videos. Make sure you stick around tomorrow to see the new item in action. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed this theory video for the movement of the cube. Thanks so much for watching. Have an amazing rest of the day, and I'll see you tomorrow with some more Fortnite. Goodbye.